Hello and welcome everybody to today's headline speaker talk. We have got some incredible speakers with us today, and we will be talking all about how media plays such a huge part in a brand and retailer's life cycle. So I'm going to welcome our incredible speakers on to the stage. Hello. Hi everyone. Are we all here? Yes. Great. Hi. Amazing. So I'm going to do a really short intro into what this talk is all about. We have got a chat on the side. So if anyone does have any questions for our speakers along the way, please pop your questions in the chat. Otherwise, we should have some time at the end to go over it. So, I mean, really, we've got some incredible journalists, PRs here today. Media does play a huge part in a brand and retailer's life. And so what we really wanted to do is get some tips, some tricks, and not only share with you today some of the upcoming trends that these guys predict to be huge, but also how you as a brand or a retailer can position yourself in the media. How do you get the best media exposure, how to get noticed, and really uncover all these guys' years of experience in 1 hour. Let's try and get it in. So I'm gonna kick off by getting you to all introduce yourselves. I'm sure you do it much more justice than me doing it. And so shall we start with you, Sonia? Can you give us a little intro about yourself and your background?
Hi, yes, thank you for having me on, Sam. So I am Sonia Haria. I'm the beauty director of the Telegraph group. So I oversee the beauty content in the newspaper, both magazines on the Saturday and Sunday, and also online, which plays a big part of my role. And I've been at the Telegraph for 14 years. Which is a long time, but it's kind of changed with the whole media landscape. You know, things have changed and evolved so much in the last 10 years. So I've really sort of seen it go from a sort of print and newspaper first publication to being a real digital first company. So that's me.
Amazing, thank you, Sonia. Nicola, over to you.
Thanks, Sam. So I was a radio broadcaster for 15 years on Classic FM, Magic, Heart and Smooth. And I kind of had enough. And I was also doing beauty writing on the side. And I decided to kind of put both my passions together. And I started a podcast called Outspoken Beauty, which is now one of the leading beauty and wellbeing podcasts in the UK. And we also have a panel of nearly 500 women who trial products and give honest reviews.
Amazing. Thanks, Nicola. I always say whenever I speak to Nicola, I'm like, your voice is just so soothing and so lovely. Just speak to me. Just speak to me. Hannah, over to you.
Sure. So yeah, thanks for having me, Sam. I am a PR and communications consultant. So I have worked with big brands, including Condé Nast, Liberty, Science Magic Inc. from an agency side. But more recently, I have flown the nest and taken off on my own, and I'm focusing much more on independent brands, specifically beauty. And that's actually how we met, through PR. So I also work with Curate and their team to kind of manage comms and PR as well. So yeah, much more into the kind of indie beauty space at the moment, which is really exciting.
Amazing. Thanks, Hannah. And Rhea, last but not no means least, over to you.
Good morning. So I'm Rhea Cartwright, Beauty Director at The Stack, which is a new network for mission-driven women. Being quite a new company, I still have my fingers in lots of different pies. So prior to getting into writing, I did a lot of strategy consulting. I have a very strong retail background. So for me, stepping then into my media shoes, I'm very kind of particular about what I'm looking for, because I'm always thinking about the consumer. So I spend a lot of my time now, obviously still with The Stack and doing some freelance writing for kind of select publications, but a lot of my time is still kind of directly with brands, thinking about ways to kind of grow and communicate their business.
Amazing. I mean, what an incredible lineup. All of your experience together is incredible. So thank you for all being here today. I think let's kick off by asking you guys kind of what do you think makes a brand really special? What stands out for you? What really resonates with you? Rhea, do you want to kick things off?
Ooh, so I think for me, it's always, where is the first touch point? And I think, you know, especially kind of post-pandemic, if I'm allowed to even say post-pandemic, with, you know, bricks and mortar, unfortunately, not being a priority. For me, their social media is the first place I will always go to. That for me is the store that's always open, so to speak. It's 24 hours, live and direct. Not only is it a place for me to see, you know, the branding, aesthetics, which whilst obviously doesn't change the formula, it's a really important thought. And a lot of times for me, I find brands maybe don't think about that at the beginning. They're thinking so much about the product, which, you know, for me as someone that's obsessed with products that actually work and deliver, that's so crucial. But people shop on emotion for the most part rather than function, unfortunately, to some respect. So social media will tell me a lot about their aesthetic, also often their diversity. Diversity is a very large thing for me. If I see that all of the people in their campaigns look the same and are not representative of society, that for me is a bit of a red flag. And then naturally, I'll then go to their site. Again, you know, I understand sites are flipping expensive. So I will, you know, if there are a few kind of bugs, I understand that, because I understand that sometimes it takes, you know, investment to get to that part. But I think it's making sure that everything's cohesive right from the get-go. For me, whether it's a brand that's 6 days old or 6 years old, there are constant tweaks that need to be made. And I think for me, a modern consumer, I was listening to a podcast this morning that was talking, and it was like with the business of fashion, digital, when we're spending time online, our attention spans are so small. So if it doesn't grab me, I know it's not going to grab somebody else, because we're really spoiled now. So I check the digital presence, and then I check the founders. I'm like, who are the founders? Why have they made this brand? If it says it's sustainable, I'm like, okay, but did you really need to make a new brand if you care about the environment? So I will do my due diligence on the founders, and then I will be like, okay, do I want to engage or not? So that's always my first port of call.
I love that. I think that's really interesting, though, to go to the Instagram now more so than the website first.
Yeah.
Sonia, you're nodding. What for you really kind of stands out for you? And are you the same? Are you going straight to a brand's Instagram before you hit their website?
Yes, it's definitely a big part of the discovery of a new brand, because as Rhea says, it really is that shop front that's always open. You know, that kind of sums it up so nicely. And for us, what's really important is our readers really like to know a story. They really want to kind of get involved with a product, rather than it just being sort of a product on a page or part of an article. So, you know, for me, it really is about kind of, especially now, so more than ever, almost knowing where the brand comes from, who is behind it, because, you know, it's all good and well having a good product, but also there needs to be a person behind it, and there needs to be a face behind it. And, you know, it's much more of a sort of organic way for us to feature things if there's a really interesting, clever brand founder behind a product that can really bring it to life. And at the same time, you know, provide some insights, some tips, some tricks to our readers. You know, that's what I'm kind of looking for. What I find with a lot of new brands is they perhaps come out with huge ranges all at once, and it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for me as an editor to kind of almost think, right, what is you almost can't see the wood from the trees. But also then for a consumer, if you're kind of hit with huge range of products, because you want to tick the box of having a vitamin C, having a retinol, having, you know, all those kind of keywords and those trends and stuff. I think sometimes what I'm looking out for is almost the kind of hero products that a brand have maybe put all of their love and attention into. They're really kind of hold it up as their star product. And, you know, there's quite a few indie brands that have come to my attention in the last sort of 5 or 6 months, and the kind of key similarities between them all is that they have maybe this kind of amazing hair serum, that they've put all of their love and energy into, and then maybe, you know, down the line comes a, you know, ancillary products or a wider range. But, you know, I think that's a really nice way to kind of engage with a brand on the immediate.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so having a good story, a great founder, but also a hero product that's really highlighted. Nicola, what for you is kind of stand out? And I think it's interesting because you come at it from a slightly, I mean, you're still talking about beauty in the same way, but it must be quite different for you because you've only got your voice, and people have only got their ears to listen. They're not looking at it. Obviously, you've got Instagram as well, but you're the way in which you describe things is very different. So are you looking at brands in a different way for your podcast?
I'm totally with Sonia. I'm looking for stories. I'm looking for wonderful personalities. Obviously, you know, the actual product needs to perform and needs to be good. That is an absolute, it just goes without saying. But when you're on a podcast, I always say to guests, I want my listeners to be able to fall in love with you. So I've actually had to cancel some podcasts because they just sounded so commercial, and a brand founder comes on and that you know that they've been trained, and that never is going to work in a podcast space. I want the real founders telling the stories. And actually, I'm also looking for people who genuinely love their consumer. And that is so important to me. You can always tell if someone really, you know, I was talking to someone yesterday about how, you know, Charlotte Tilbury, when she's in an event, and we must remember she started off as a small independent brand, she gets her hands dirty. She goes in and she does people's makeup because she genuinely loves making people feel good. And all those things translate on a podcast. And if you fall in love with the founder, then you're going to be much more certain to want to buy from the brand.
Absolutely. And Hannah, from your point of view, we touched on this yesterday in our other headline talk, it is so important for founders to be at the forefront and of their brand, but often kind of finding the balance, and not everyone wants to be front of the camera sharing their whole life. How do you kind of encourage the brands you work with to be put themselves forward in the best way?
It's a totally case-by-case basis. Some people, as you said, are super comfortable with it, just want to tell the world, are really passionate. They've come up with the most innovative idea and they're just excited to tell everyone about it. And that passion is so contagious. And I think in that kind of context, I just see myself as a connector. So I'm like, I can talk about your brands to the journalists, and that's fine, and I can do my job, but actually they need to meet you and they need to understand where this comes from and the source. So I'm not protective. I'm never protective over my networks in that sense. You know, I'm very much about bringing people together and having conversations. For the founders that aren't as comfortable doing that, I think there's always ways around it. And whether it's, you know, there are some founders that I work with that are absolutely that have genuinely come up with the most incredible ideas in an industry that is completely oversaturated. They're like really coming up with ideas that are revolutionary, really, and they're shy and, you know, don't want to have the conversations with journalists. So it's like, okay, well, let's start with the base. Let's start with an email saying, you know, we'll get the questions and then I'll send them to you, and just write your answers down, and we go at it like that. So it kind of is a case by case basis, but just reassurance that the idea is good, you know, and that, you know, getting that feedback from journalists as well directly is always amazing and a really great confidence booster as well. I think it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And now kind of we're seeing so many brands come to market, and especially I think for skincare, it's a hugely saturated market. So standing out is really key. Is there anything that you guys would recommend or that you've seen that is sort of low cost but high impact in terms of launches, or how brands can get their products to you? Sonia, I'd love to ask you.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, low impact. What I personally find is more useful than ever, and I feel like we may talk about this kind of later in the session as well, but I think more than ever, you know, PR really helps with essentially, you know, storytelling and almost kind of singling out what the USP of a product is and why it's important for us as a publication that probably gets pitched several hundred new launches and products every month, to kind of really stand out and almost, formulate ideas as to why it is really interesting for our reader. Because, for us, it's, we have a slightly older, not an older demographic, it's kind of 35 plus demographic. But, we get pitched lots of ideas from brands who come to me directly and are perhaps much more of a younger brand, much more of a Gen Z brand, which doesn't really resonate with our readers at all. So I think that kind of connector, as Hannah says, like almost being that, having someone to kind of connect the editors to the brands, even if it's not a sort of formal big agency that kind of maybe does it how PR has been done in the past. But, I think those kind of relationships are really, really important. And I kind of value those more than ever before now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I feel like when you're an indie brand and you're the founder, you kind of want to do it all because, one, budgets are tight and you want to try and do your own PR. But I totally agree. I think it's probably one of the best investments that indie brands can make, is even just having someone freelance as a PR that has great contacts that can almost be that funnel for you, and pitch it in the way that they know that the newspapers, the magazines, the journalists are gonna best pick it up. Rhea, what about for you? Have you seen any kind of standout ways in which brands have contacted you or showcased their products?
I think first of all, I 100% agree with Sonia. I think, getting PR as soon as possible and just delegating. I think when you're a founder, you are your brand's greatest asset. So the more that you can do in terms of, doing interviews, being the face, engaging with your consumers, means that you have to, the tasks that you're not the best at, give them to someone that's way better equipped. Basically hire Hannah or a version as possible. I think, and this is obviously a privilege, I think, in terms of where you're based, like geographically, but I think it's network the life out of yourself. So join a community, join a club. If you've got a friend that's a member at Soho House, go every day, go, like if there are consumer events, this is, I think, something that's actually quite smart. If there are consumer events that are happening, let's say, for example, there's a huge, like a diptyque event, and they're quite often there are journalists that will host these events. Go there, introduce yourself. I'm not saying, give a goodie bag there and then, but get those connections and build them. I think often think about it in terms of you're going. I used to go to a lot of consumer events to find out what other consumers wanted, because I don't need to find out because I already know the information. But I would go for what do other people still want to know? Stuff like that is so invaluable. And I think, I can imagine for a brand that's just launched, the idea of spending money on PR, because it's a huge spectrum of cost. I think people don't realize, it can be thousands and thousands a month for certain representation. It's a cost that is just unfathomable and just, frankly, won't make a profitable business. I think you just engage in a way that feels natural for you. I think back to Hannah's point as well about being comfortable speaking is, I understand that people need reassuring, but I think it's also, you kind of have no choice. When you are being scrappy and bootstrapping at the beginning, you have no choice but to put yourself out there. Nobody else is going to do it for you. So if you can, if as Sonia said, the amount of emails a week, a month, I mean, I dread to think how many Sonia gets even in comparison to me, and even mine, I'm like, oh gosh, make it stop. So, for me, even things like the correct subject line and emails, because there are so many coming through, it's how do you get your email even opened? When I do open the email, I want it succinct, I want pictures, I want prices, I don't want an essay, kind of make it easier for the people on the other side of it. And I know sometimes it's hard because you want to speak about your baby and put everything, but I think it's when you think about how many emails all of us get in life, but then with our job, how many we get, we have to be compelled from that subject line, from the preview text, hi, I hope you're doing well. Honestly, that I don't even care. Like, tell me what the product is from the get-go. Give me some links, put some fantastic imagery, and then I'm like, oh, okay. And now it's like step one of the funnel, I guess, that awareness. We can at least tick that box. If I don't respond, maybe check back in 2 weeks. Don't email me every single week after that. But it's just being smart, I think, with your comms at every step.
Yeah, I think that's some really good advice. Really, really good. And Nicola, what about for you? Kind of do's and don'ts when brands are approaching you. What do you think works well and what doesn't?
I'll really quickly cover off the don'ts with emails. I don't know if this is just me being ridiculous, but I really like it when people use my name in an email. So when I get like a hi lovely or hiya, I'm just like, it just doesn't connect. So I often don't read those ones because of the influx of emails. But the other thing I'd say is with PRs, the PR has a job as well to build a relationship. And I know Sonia and Rhea, I'm sure you feel the same, but there'll be PRs that you've built relationships with over the years and you really trust them and you're kind of going to listen to them more maybe than a random one. So that you need to get your PR, and Hannah's amazing at this, to build relationships with people. And for me, I'm a little bit different actually. I'm very open to getting direct messages on Instagram, and I get a lot of messages from founders and sometimes asking me advice. I talk a lot about anti-aging. So people often come to me and say, what language should I use instead of anti-aging? And often that kicks off conversations and I end up maybe doing podcasts with them because I really love hearing from founders and I really love having conversations and I get really inspired by them. So as far as I'm concerned, don't be afraid to just message me on Instagram, and I'm pretty good at getting back. I like making friends. So
Nicola's inbox after this is going to be like,
I can't promise I'll like get back instantly, but I am really passionate about founders and their stories. So yeah, if I can help, I always will.
I love that. Thanks, guys. And then I'd like to touch on kind of the retail side of things. And so obviously now, I mean, with so many more products being on the market, so many more brands, there's more multi-brand retail destinations. And obviously the big guys, the cult beauties, the Feel Uniques, get great media attention. How do you guys think the smaller startup multi-brand marketplaces can get the same attention? Hannah?
I think owning your niche. I think being really kind of confident in your offering and really understanding who you're talking to and who your customer base is an amazing start. Exclusives obviously always help. If you can be a retailer to discover a brand and bring it to the mass, however big or however small you are, that's always an incredibly helpful asset. But I don't know, I'm thinking, for example, of ILO, founded by Gemma, who you know as well, Sam, who she's an incredible woman, experience in fashion styling first, and basically just had this idea because she realized that the sex industry was completely monopolized by men, basically making sex products for women, and obviously just not understanding a woman's body in the way that a woman understands a woman's body. So was like, cool, I understand my demographic. This is my target. This is exclusively what I'm going to sell. Her edit is small, it's niche, but it is bang on, and it's curated perfectly. It's the way that she's created the aesthetic, the branding, the logo, everything. She understands who she's talking to. So I think for smaller retailers, just being really proud of your customer base, however big or small, is a really kind of nice way to kind of enter the market and speak to people.
Yeah, I think that's some really good advice, because I think also you kind of think, I'll just go far and wide, but actually now, because there is so much information out there, just having your niche, having a curated edit is really quite key. Sonia, would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that idea of really kind of owning your niche, because, you know, it makes your site or your offering a real destination for people. And, you know, it's you don't need the whole market, and you can't ever be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
You know, so really kind of super serving whoever you feel like is your real consumer and giving them the best of the best when it comes to, you know, not only purchasing products, but also maybe added content or, you know, really like, actually this, you might find this interesting, just really kind of honing in on that niche. I think that's, yeah, totally great. I totally agree with Hannah on that.
And building out that community aspect, like you said, but making content, really owning your community and making sure that they know what they're coming to you for. I think that's, yeah, absolutely key. And so we kind of talked, that was more about the sexual wellness, but it would be great to hear from you guys what other trends, category trends that you're seeing that are really exciting for you. Nicola, shall we start with you?
I'm a huge fan of, and this obviously has been going on for years, but personalized skincare. I really like the things that Skin and Me are doing. There's a company called Leonie, Get Harley, that they're really talking to their consumers as individual people and not saying this is going to be for everyone. And independent brands, I think, have a real opportunity, maybe not to hone in quite as much as a Skin and Me, where you get a prescription from a dermatologist, but try and speak to the individual a lot more. And obviously you've got your community, and it could be a very focused community, but then within that community, what do the different people need with skincare? Try and really help them out, like the Inky list do that really well, answering their questions, but be an advisor, be there for them and make them feel special. That stands out for me a lot.
Love that. And Rhea, what about for you? Any category trends that are hot? I think
what I'm loving is brands leaning into a more kind of holistic edge. So I think that anything kind of woo-woo, and that's not, people often find that term a bit rude. I love that term because I am a very woo-woo person. And I think that that's going to grow. And I think particularly post-pandemic, where a lot of people have lent more into meditation and energy. And I think, you know, these things, I think for me, fundamentally, for the most part, are based in ancient rituals and routines. Like, I think, you know, I'm not going to speak about how things have now changed and maybe kind of look down on them. But I think we're almost seeing a resurgence back to the things that our ancestors did, you know, for hundreds, thousands of years. So for me, it's, you know, it's not necessarily about putting crystals into a toner and saying, wow, like that for me is just not, like, that's not personally my vibe. But I'm really enjoying how brands are talking about meditation, talking about energy, and also really being very clear and saying that actually, if you're putting a serum on your face that, yes, potentially is, you know, clinically backed and but you're drinking lots, smoking lots, you know, not maybe having the best sleep, poor diet, and speaking to consumers actually in a bit more, I guess, not in a brutal way, but just being a bit more realistic. Like these things, you know, Botox in a bottle, it doesn't exist. But facelift in a tube, it doesn't exist. And also, thank God it doesn't exist, you know? So I think it's about kind of, for me, it's brands that are, the communication side for me is always the thing that, it's not a category for sure, but the way that brands are speaking with their customers. And again, for me, particularly, you know, post quite a lot of social issues that we've had in the last 18 months, coupled with the pandemic, I think consumers are a lot more diligent about where they put their money. So any brands that can tap into that, whether it is sexual wellness or black hair or, you know, skincare, retinoids, whatever the case is, the brands that are leading are the brands that are communicating their message the best across any category for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's great about social media is you almost get that like instant, you instantly can see from a brand how they are interacting with their customers. It's not all behind emails and behind closed doors. It's all in front of us, and their language that they're using in their posts, but also on their website, and how they get their message across is so key. And obviously got to be consistent throughout. What about you, Sonia? What kind of big category trends are you seeing?
So a big trend for us, which is such a funny term because it's ongoing and it's always been here, but we're talking about it a lot more, is the menopause, because for our reader, and it's particularly for our Stella reader, who is primarily a sort of 40+ woman, it's a topic that's never really been openly discussed or had content produced around it. And I think it's a tricky one because there's a real fine line between being openly giving advice and really interesting material for readers to read about around the menopause, and also and kind of enriching their lives, coupled with not wanting to be patronizing and just sticking products on pages because a big hair care brand has suddenly realized that there's a big trend in menopause, and actually, oh, maybe I'll just stick menopause on a shampoo bottle and say that it's for menopausal hair. I think there's a real education around not patronizing a consumer, because they are smart and they are clever. They do their research. It's not, as Rhea said, it's not like 10 years ago or 20 years ago where you kind of, you look to this kind of it cream to solve all your problems, and it's all kind of otherworldly, and you don't really know what's inside it, and you don't really understand the ingredients list, but the person on the makeup counter or the skincare counter told you it's good, so you're going to use it. That's totally not our consumer anymore. People will research and find out, and they want to know what's going on. So when it comes to kind of menopause, we're producing a lot more content, and we kind of have over the last few years, but it's definitely a topic that sort of help in terms of opening up education and discussions around it with health practitioners and doctors and that sort of thing. But I think if anyone's ever going to kind of launch a brand looking into that market, I think there's a real fine line then between kind of trying to serve that community, which is a very, very, very valuable community who have got, a lot of the time, the biggest kind of disposable income, but also not patronizing them by saying, oh, you'll just, this is all for you because it says menopause on a packet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This face spritz will just relieve all your hot flashes, and that's that. What about from your side, Hannah? What kind of trends are you seeing category-wise?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of taking a bit of what Sonia and Rhea are saying. I think this idea of patronizing is really interesting, because less of a category and more of an ethos. The brands that are confident enough in their product and in their niche to say, this won't fix everything. This won't be your one-stop solution. And actually, what Rhea's talking about in this holistic idea of beauty and well-being, saying, yeah, you kind of need to incorporate all of that, but this is a great supplement to that, and this is something that will bring you and help you along the way. It's exactly that thing of not patronizing your customer and trying to force feed them a supplement or give them a cream that's going to be the be all and end all, and actually saying and being really honest about the fact that that it's part of a bigger ritual, it's part of a bigger routine. I think that's becoming more and more prominent, and it brings with it a level of confidence that I think is actually quite intoxicating. It's like you're like, oh, okay, so I need to be thinking about all of these other things as well. That's really interesting, and that's when you see the results that you're searching for, right? So less of a category and more of an ethos and an approach to beauty.
Yeah. And it's kind of following on from you really want brands to be transparent but also authentic. And I think that being honest, and I 100% agree with you, not just being like, this is going to fix it all, but it's saying this is going to help this, and this. Brilliant, great, leave it at that. And it won't help these other things because you need to sleep well, drink lots of water, and have stress. And it's the balance. And I agree, the transparency and the authenticity is so, so key. Moving on to more kind of like product trends, what kind of exciting product trends are you guys seeing? It can be a product type, or it can be a texture, or something that has really blown you away. I mean, Sonia, you've been doing this for so long. I mean, are you ever blown away with something, or are you just like, oh, it's another lipstick?
Am I ever like, yeah, some skincare. I think the product wise, I've been really leaning into, which kind of goes back to a previous point, of like ancestral beauty. So I'm Indian. I haven't really spoken about Ayurvedic products and that sort of thing over the past few years. And it was only until I kind of, over the last couple of months, have tried a lot more hair oils that, you know, my grandmother used to put on my hair when I was 6 years old, you know, to kind of nourish my scalp and stuff. And, you know, I stopped doing it as a teen because I was like, I don't want greasy hair. I am totally going back into all of that because it kind of marries that whole holistic element, which I love. I'm really into, you know, I'm not one to just kind of slot in skincare and hair care because it's functional. I feel like beauty is so much more than that. It's emotional. It's to make you feel better, as much as, you know, to have the function of making your skin look better or your hair better. And I'm really finding that, you know, by leaning into all of the Ayurvedic remedies, and there are some amazing, like really kind of lovely niche brands that are founded by South Asian founders who've had the similar background of, like, you know, having these amazing like Ayurvedic remedies mixed up at home as children, and are now thinking, actually, those things really worked, and they did. And there's a reason why we all had thick, long, lovely hair. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a real kind of exciting area that I'm kind of almost rediscovering now.
Are there any brands that you can think of off the top of your head that you think are doing this really well and getting that message of the kind of older traditions, kind of bringing it back into the present time?
Absolutely, yeah. So I really like using the hair oil Fable and Mane, which is founded by a brother and sister of Indian heritage, who have, again, similar, you know, they developed the hair oil because it was a remedy that their grandparents would use on their hair. And also there's an interesting brand from America, again, a little brand called Ranavat, which I've kind of been following for the past kind of 6 months or so. And I think it's launching in the UK at some point. But again, it's a female Indian brand founder who is bringing not just kind of hair oils, but I think there's maybe a 4 or 5 piece collection in the product offering, including a tool which is, you know, like a sort of ancient Ayurvedic tool. So kind of those, yeah, there's a couple of like little interesting brands cropping up, and I think as long as they still tick the boxes, like I will never just support a Ayurvedic brand because it's an Ayurvedic brand. I think it still needs to have integrity. It needs to have the science backing. It needs to really kind of work, and it also needs to, you know, it needs to not just launch for the sake of it, essentially. Yeah. And again, it goes back to having that really interesting brand founder element as well. And, you know, I want to speak to someone. I want to know, like, why did you develop it? You know, how long did it take you in the labs to kind of recreate this amazing remedy? So you know, you kind of want to still have that full picture behind the product.
Yeah, the story is so key, and yeah, product knowledge behind it is so key. What about you, Nicola? Any kind of exciting product trends you're seeing?
I just think home fragrance went crazy during the pandemic because we were all using it for escapism. And I know people who would light one candle in the morning and then they'd like have their kind of lunchtime one and then their evening one. And actually one brand that stood out to me so much, and I think they're under Curate, Sam, is La Montagne candles, who I've never experienced anything like them. They actually magically captured the smells of Spain. And I've never known anything like it. See, I lit it and I was like, I am in a cafe in Spain right now, or I am in the mountains, or I'm just waking up. And it was so beautiful for me to have that. I think there's so many people doing wonderful work in that category. I think there's a lot of innovation, a lot of sustainability, original fragrance combinations, and often with a story. So it's random because I talk a lot about skincare, but the thing that gives me that frisson of excitement is home fragrance. I love it. Love it.
And I think that's so key with fragrance, marrying the everything that they had imagined that this candle was going to be, even from the name to how it actually makes you feel. And it's so important that actually is translated throughout. And I agree, La Montagne do that really, really well.
And actually, just going back to the points earlier about having your focus, I mean, you could not find anything more focused than that. They absolutely know what they want and they deliver it, which is why they're doing well, I think.
Yeah, amazing. Hannah, what about for you? Any great?
It's a hard one. I'm not just going to name drop a load of clients here.
You can, because I'm sure you wouldn't take them on if you didn't love them.
No, I think generally the theme that I think is really standing out are the brands that are taking the industry by the horns and changing it. It sounds like a really obvious thing to say, but I think that's why the independent beauty space is so exciting, because it is full of people that have looked at the market. They've been like, cool, there's nothing for me. I'm just going to get up and make it myself. And that energy is just, it's when you get the most amazing creations. I am going to name drop a few actually, because I genuinely believe in them. A brand called Wild Sauce, who recently launched at Liberty as well, they're currently the only beauty brand to actively incorporate meditation into their beauty rituals. So the founder, Kate Rowe, who Rhea knows as well, they are really changing the space and really kind of thinking of that holistic approach to beauty, and exactly what we were talking about earlier, of this idea of like, they make the most beautiful oils, but they understand that it's more than that. If you want to achieve, ultimate skin health, and the science behind meditation is really fascinating, and something that is completely under researched because it's really hard to make money out of. So, the brands that are really kind of thinking about new ways to approach beauty and wellness. And I think just the independent space for that reason is such an amazing platform. Holistic Candles, who are on Curate Beauty, actually are an amazing one, who have understood the fragrance supply chain, realize the problems in it when it comes to farmers' rights and their well-being. And it's something that we just don't talk about in the beauty industry, again, because it's just not been exposed. And they are completely reimagining that supply chain and figuring out how to make it better. So they're a small brand, but they're really packing a punch when it comes to their transparency and their supply chain, and really rethinking how we do fragrance at home. So that kind of energy, that entrepreneurial spirit, I think is really kind of what I get excited about and look for.
Amazing. I think this is all such good advice, because I think there's so many brands that probably do think about these things, the full life cycle of their brand, but maybe that's not something that of a message that they're putting out there. But it's so important. Like, everyone today has spoken about how important it is to be transparent, to be authentic, and these things really should be brought to the forefront. So if you're not shouting about it as a brand, you need to. Rhea, I'd love to hear from you. Any kind of exciting product trends that you love? Any brands really standing out to you right now?
I think for me, when I look back to maybe 5-6 years ago, when facial oils, when I think about when Sunday Riley launched over here, which was maybe 9-10ish years ago. At that time, there were so few facial oils, right? You had them, you had Darphan, which I know Darphan for sure, not indie at all. But they still kind of have that feel. And for me now, when you look at how many facial oils we have now, obviously the market's saturated, full stop, but there are so many facial oils now. So for me, when it's a more kind of naturally led brand, if I'm even allowed to use that term now, we can't say natural. For me, then actually I guess, to speak very frankly, and there might be people on here that have brands like this, we can all create water-free products at home by just ordering some oils of aromatics, getting some nice branding, slapping it on and selling it to whoever. And for me, especially when they are water-free, so when we're speaking about, beautifully blended oils, I want to really know, where does that oil come from? Do you know if you're making it by hand? If there's a slight color difference, why has that happened? Because I think it's so crucial for consumers to understand that, in the same way that you could have, strawberries, you could have organic strawberries, you could have bioorganic strawberries. So I think that for me, a trend that we're going to see is really thinking about the integrity of the ingredient. And also mainly because for sure that the higher quality of the ingredient, the better the result, right? It's going to be more nutrient dense. Your skin is going to get more out of it. I think it's, you know, science is science. So our skin has functioned perfectly well for thousands of years, frankly, with nothing. And no one really kind of cried about it. So for me, it's when people are making products, I want you to really tell me, why did you choose that farm? And actually, I think it also is part of a founder due diligence that, okay, yes, you're buying it from a manufacturer or a distributor rather. Where have they bought it from? Where are they buying it from? You know, are they buying it from a crop that's next to a motorway, or is it in New Zealand in the middle of nowhere and it's flourishing and there aren't any cars? That has a difference on how it's going to affect my skin. On top of that, though, for me, in color, we've not really spoken about color and makeup. I'm always interested in new textures because that's fun. I think skincare is, it's still emotional, of course, but it's a lot more, for me, it needs to be more functional. But makeup, color, so new textures coming out for me is so exciting. New ways to present, new packaging. How can we, the idea really now of kind of a cream blush with my fingers in a COVID world makes me feel a bit weird taking it out because I will just dab. I'm not hugely into brushes. So different ways to play with texture, packaging, that for me is exciting. I think that can always be adapted. And I think also that kind of changes and evolves in the way that our lives evolve. So I think, now, like there's a new hand cream coming out that's a hand cream and an antibacterial gel in one. 2 years ago, I feel like that would never have been a thing. Whereas now it's like, do I need that? Like, I probably need that. So just like clever things that are going to adapt to our new ways of living.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think there's any kind of makeup brands that are standing out right now to you that are doing that well?
Indie, no. For me, that's a huge untapped area. There are indie brands for me that are doing it in terms of sustainability and, cruelty-free. But in terms of things that are really, because it's expensive, let's be honest, to create new textures in a lab is pricey. So I guess I could say maybe like Depixiem, that when I first saw them at a trade show, I saw them at Indie Beauty Expo a couple of years ago. I was like, God, this is super cool, really high pigment. And I think they're a fantastic brand. But what it misses for someone like me is that I want to still be wowed. I still want the glamour. And Depixiem, if I were a makeup artist, for sure, they would be in my kit. But I'm not like, this is sexy. I want a sexy blusher, something that's, when you take out a heritage brand product, I won't name any names, there is an emotion behind that. And there's almost a pride to opening up that compact. Maybe it's the logo, maybe it's just that, but it feels, a weighty lipstick. But now we know that they put weights in there to make them feel expensive. So what are you going to do a sustainable way to still give me that emotion? I mean, I don't have the answers on that one, I'm afraid. That is for the geniuses at home, but that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think like skincare, we have been wowed by so many incredible indie brands, and makeup is, even for us at Curate, like we're always trying to search for new makeup brands that are doing something different, to being sustainable, being conscious. And we have a few that are amazing and doing great things, but it's also the shade ranges. You want people to come out with not just 4 foundation colors, but a whole range of colors. And of course it's expensive, but yeah, there's definitely some room for growth there. I'm going to finish with one final question to you all, and that is, what is something that you are really, really excited about in beauty retail right now? It can be a place, a destination, a concept, an initiative. Sonia, I'd love to start with you.
Oh,
sorry.
What am I really excited about? Oh gosh,
has anyone got anything that they could think of straight away?
Thanks.
Nicola?
I really love certain, so first of all, what Hannah was talking about before, ILO. Is it pronounced ILO, Hannah?
Yeah.
I'm so excited about what Gemma's done. And like, she sent me one of, I probably shouldn't say this on it. She sent me one of their sex toys. And I was so wowed by the fact that a woman had designed it. And it was so wonderful. And as you said, the aesthetic of the website and everything she's doing. So that's got me really excited. I also like what Dame Tampons are doing. They've got the most amazing messaging. I absolutely love their products. I love what they're doing for sustainability, but I also love the fact that they are, like, as we were saying before, they genuinely are brilliant products. So, oh gosh, that hasn't really answered your question. Has that answered your question?
That's all right. No. I think it has. It definitely has. And it's just some tidbits for people to kind of take away, look at, take note of, and take their own takeaways, I guess, from it. Hannah, anything for you in beauty retail that's really exciting?
I'm just thinking about the way that retail is going to adapt to this new space, kind of what Rhea was talking about, you know, like putting your fingers in a cream, like being a bit like, oh, I don't know if that's for me. And, you know, these kind of new things that we have to think about. I think as an industry, if there's going to be an industry that does it well, it's going to be beauty. You know, it's so adaptable and so quick off the mark. I'm really excited to see the kind of, I mean, also the brands that are going to come out of all of this as well, and the ideas and the formulations. And I think, yeah, we've had so much change in the last 2 years now. Oh my God. That I think, yeah, just whatever, you know, whatever silver linings we can take, if that has to be from the beauty industry, let's take it. I think there are going to be some really exciting things, and also how retail, physical space retail, how they are going to have to adapt. You know, a store like Liberty or Selfridges or Harrods, these kind of big heritage department stores, you know, how they are going to adapt to an online customer, you know, and what that's going to look like, and those innovations, I think, is going to be really, really exciting as well.
Great. Sonia, shall I come back to you or
yes,
not?
I can totally come in here. Interestingly, for sort of physical retail spaces, I do feel like there's a real opportunity to kind of, you know, revolutionize how we're shopping, because we are shopping differently. You know, we don't shop routines anymore. We don't shop a 3-step system from one brand, and that's just, you know, that's just not how a lot of our kind of generation now are shopping. So when it comes to kind of retail spaces, I think anything that replicates the kind of organic, curated, nice edited, you know, maybe it's sort of 1 or 2 products per brand, or you know, spaces like that, spaces for discovery. I think that's kind of how we'll be shopping for beauty in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think that's kind of the exciting part about this. Like, obviously the pandemic has been hugely detrimental to so many people and businesses, but the innovation that we're seeing from the brand side, but also the retail side, is probably something we've been needing to happen for a long time. Retail needed to change, and it's almost like this is sort of given it the kick up the arse that it kind of needed. Oh, good, you're back, Rhea, because I was going to ask you.
You know what, I went to grab my charger, and I was like, I don't want to take you guys through my hallway. So I was still listening.
No worries. What for you are you really excited about in beauty retail right now, would you say?
So for me, it's the whole immersive experience.
Yeah.
So I think it's, you know, bricks and mortar, I think, is actually going to play a bigger role than people imagine. Of course, we know, like, e-com dominated, but I think it's, you know, beauty is all about discovery. It's sensual. You want to touch, sniff, try, but touching, sniffing and trying with, you know, a virus is probably, and whilst, you know, things for sure get better, there'll be lots of people that still have lots of anxiety around that, and I fully understand that. So I think it's, you know, you look at flannels and all of their kind of regional pop-ups, they're spending a lot. I mean, again, flannels, they're huge. But flannels, H Beauty, with their beauty destination, is investing a lot of money in beauty tech. So it becomes a hugely, it's a destination. And I think it's going back to probably when we think about when, like, we were younger, you'd go shopping to your shopping centre and it would be like a family day out. And I think that that's what retail has to kind of go back to. It's, it's not just like, as Sonia mentioned, it's not just we're going out to just have a routine. It's like, oh my God, I want to go to here because I want to see this. I want to try that. I want to, you know, use an AI-driven mirror that's going to pop it on my face. I want to go into a individual beauty changing room in the Flannels in Sheffield and have a private space to myself and play on my own. And I think, again, it's that kind of omni-channel relationship between e-com, between bricks and mortar, and having that marriage. I think for me personally, just a random pop-up location for a week to 2 weeks with just product and nothing else there is boring. Like, for me, that just feels like a market. And I think for most people, that's now a boring experience, because that's really what shops have been doing, you know, for as long as shops have existed. And I think as well, I often say to clients is look at other categories outside of beauty. You know, we are so lucky in beauty. We have so much innovation in terms of science and packaging, all of those things. But quite often, I think in terms of the retail space, it would do a lot of people good to look at others. So whether it's maybe apps, I was talking to someone last week or a couple of weeks ago that has an app, huge business. And I was like, but it's so boring, your app, and it's technically a marketplace. And I was like, look at other marketplaces, look at Airbnb, look at eBay, look at the discovery side. So I think sometimes it very much serves people well to look at how the leaders in other industries are doing, because there's lots you can lean and take, which will just, everybody wants. But for me, you know, second mover advantage, third mover advantage, look at the mistakes that others have made and just do it better. Like, it's quite often that simple.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, amazing advice.
Sorry to interrupt, just to say on your point, there's an amazing business on Carnaby Street called War Paint that was founded by Danny Gray, and the experiential there is unbelievable. You can actually like interview him on a screen. It's in the room. They make foundations for you. There's a charitable barbers there. They've turned this it's a destination that people come and visit. So that's a great example of how things can move forward.
Love that. I just 100%. The experience has got to be there to make people now leave their houses to not just buy it online. Like, what is going to make them excited again? And I think things like that's really brilliant. I feel like we've spoken so much. I haven't even checked to see if there's any questions. But if anyone does have any last minute questions before the guys go, I know we are tight on time now because we have just chatted the whole way through. But please do pop it in the chat. I think you guys have shared so many great initiatives, stories, examples. And given some great tips as well. So thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing to have you and be part of the trade show. We've absolutely loved it. I'm going to bring Margot on to see if... No, Margot's not on.
I'm here.
Yes. Yay!
We haven't had any questions in the chat, but a lot of sort of positive feedback. Everyone's really been enjoying all of your tips and tricks, especially the email tips and everything. So I think the audience really, really enjoyed this, and I definitely did. So thanks everyone so much.
Thank you guys for joining.
Thank you.